Welcome to The Criminologist, the podcast dedicated to educating and entertaining our listeners. We bring you subject matter experts from around the world and share the latest and greatest evidence-based practices and interventions to help individuals desist from a life of crime and delinquency. Now, please welcome the host of The Criminologist, Joseph Arvidsson.
Hello, and welcome to episode 201 of the Criminologist podcast. Happy to have you all with us today. Hello, friends. So good to be back after a brief respite. Thank you for coming back to the show. We're so excited to be kicking off Season 5 of the Criminologist podcast with a very distinguished international guest. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Stian Estenstad, joining us all the way from Norway. Stian's journey is a testament to resilience, dedication, and transformative impact. His professional trajectory from military service and carpentry to becoming a driving force in Norway's criminal justice landscape is nothing short of remarkable. Stian's career is marked by diverse experiences, including his role as a prison officer in Oslo, where he was instrumental in establishing projects like Measure for Repeat Offenders. Now that, of course, is the English translation of that project, but it is essentially a collaboration between the prison and probation service aimed at enhancing the reintegration of individuals rejoining society. And this really showcased Stian's early commitment to progressive approaches within the justice system. Now, his passion for rehabilitation and support for justice-involved individuals led to the creation of the Nettverk After Imprisonment program in collaboration with Norway's Red Cross. This initiative has evolved into a comprehensive network offering crucial support, training, and opportunities for individuals transitioning from incarceration to society. Stian's impact extends beyond Oslo, with the Nettverk After Imprisonment program's national reach and influence evident in its expansion to multiple strategic locations across Norway. We are about to cover these topics and so much more. So please, enjoy my conversation with Stian Estenstad, joining us all the way from Norway, and I will see you all on the other side. Well, welcome to the Criminologist podcast, Stian. So glad to have you on here. We're actually kicking off Season 5, so it's an honor to have you on the show to kick off our 5th season of the show here. Why don't we begin by introduce yourself to the audience? I'm always fascinated by the fact that those of us in this field come from such diverse backgrounds and have such diverse pathways leading into the field. So maybe share a little bit of what that journey looked like for you, your diverse professional experiences, which ranged from military service to carpentry. I'm just fascinated by the various pathways folks get to get into corrections and criminal justice.
Yeah, it was no noble thoughts who actually drove me into this direction. It was actually very random. I was building up, the last thing I was building up a carpenter company. And I was getting married and I was having too much to do. I was working around the hours. So actually, I saw an announcement in the newspaper that this education for the correctional service in Norway was actually paid. So I don't have to take loans to the bank, and it was paid education. So that's why I ended up in the correction, actually.
Hey, why not? You're using some good problem solving skills even back then, right? It's paid for. So let's dive into it. Yeah.
But I was also working as a leader in my future for a drug program center. So I was having some experience before I was starting in the correction, of course, with the same group of people.
So maybe talk to us about that first experience in corrections. I know you initially started out, as many individuals in the field do, being a prison officer. What motivated you to transition from that role of prison officer to go on to initiate all sorts of amazing projects aimed at supporting justice-involved individuals, reintegrate back into the field, and start to look at some of those best practices?
Actually, I was asked by the governor in Oslo prison at that time. I was asked if I could run a project. It was the Defender project. So he was actually asked me if I could run this project because this was a cooperation between the correction and the probation. Running this project for 3 years, and this project was actually a wake-up for me, because I saw the struggling the people had when they was released from prison, and all the things which not functional after the release. So I think also this could be done much more effective and much in a better way, of course. So the goal of this project was actually to see how we could cooperate better between the municipality, but also the correction and the probation. But there were some limits, because we have to stop this following up when they was finished with their sentence. And they need a lot longer following up, of course. So when this project was finished, I saw that the Red Cross actually asked they asked me if I will establish and lead a new project on behalf of the Red Cross, because they was actually running some following up for the inmates. We have the Red Cross at that time had a visiting service. Actually, we was visiting people inside prisons, but we don't following them up afterwards. So that was something new they want to try out. So I was giving this opportunity to start this project.
I love your insight there. And you mentioned having that wake-up call, that realization of, you could almost make an argument, the short-sightedness of those reintegration efforts, because as you pointed out, they ended when the individual's correctional sentence ended. But as you realized, well, that doesn't stop their journey. So I applaud you for looking out at those other stakeholders to start making those connections. Sounds like beginning with the Red Cross, but I know this led to a theme of how else you could sort of leverage those traditional or even non-traditional networks to benefit the individual. Maybe expand on that concept of networking after imprisonment, and how you built on that initial collaboration with Norway's Red Cross to help folks transition from incarceration back into the community.
Actually, my experience was that a new punishment starts the day they were released from prison. I said these people go from being locked in prison, being locked out to society when they were released from prison. And this is actually a lot about social fair, social skills, and social status. So network after imprisonment should actually, the target was to prepare them to life after prison and assist them back to society in a better way than they used to for before. Well, so our main task is actually to contribute to normalization. At that time, the Red Cross had actually a service which we called the visitor service. It started, I think, in 1960. And this service continue at this time also. I have also responsibility for this service today. And there, in this service, we just visited the prisoners during the sentence to contribute to normalization during the sentence. But the gap between the prison and the life to come afterwards is so big. So we have to do something. So the Red Cross want me to start building up a project to help them out in a better way. So when I think about normalization, I think actually to try to treat people like other people and getting them in touch with ordinary people, because it's so easy for them to go back to the crime network and the crime friends. and also to try to help them doing actually normally things and activities together with normal people, and actually participate in everyday life together with people who actually start following them up at the last part of the sentence and continue after release. That's very important. So actually this is a lot about bringing ownership back and responsibility back in their own lives, because I think both when you are in prison and you are in rehab before drugs in institutions, it's a kind of the same problem afterwards, because it's so easy for them to put responsibility away to the government and to the municipality, because somebody open your doors and do everything. You can't do anything to impact your own life. So I think people actually, when they are released from prison, it's a very struggle for them to actually take ownership back to their own life. So this is actually just training to do ordinary things together with ordinary people. People need actually interaction with people. And our efforts was building up. We started first, the main task was actually to help them out to build new and healthy social network, preventing loneliness. And when we also have one-to-one following up and a lot of group activities, of course. And then we start building up a new offering, which we call the debt program, because a lot of the prisoners in Norway have a big debt problems. And this program takes a lot of time, and it's a quite popular program, and everybody who actually who wants our help, almost everybody wants to have help with the debt program. That's very important, because there is no use to give them job and opportunities if they can't keep the money, and because a lot of the people we see being released from prison are actually forced back to crime because there is no other options. And we also have a youth program. It's actually the youngest criminals between 15 years and 25 years. And this is a lot about gang problems. And this program is a lot closer following up than the adults, of course. And we also have a lot of programs in the prisons to affect the youngest one. And we also have a close cooperation with the municipality, the police, the school, the parents, and a lot of institutions on the outside, of course. So we also have the work program, which is also very important. Actually give them work training and assist them back to ordinary jobs. And the last program is the family program, because a lot of our participants have kids and they are parents. So it's so important for us to help them out to be good parents and do pleasant and safe activities for children. So this is the 5 main tasks, I think, for the network after imprisonment. But our experience after several years, we was building up a network after imprisonment, and we developed and to several places in Norway. Even if we have a lot of good programs and do a lot of good things, it wasn't good enough, because there is a lot of things those people need help to. So the question was, how do we bridge the gap between the prisons and the society? Mm-hmm. So that's the problem, because there is a lot of problems when it comes to this group of people. There is a lot of challenges when it comes to life conditions.
Stian, one of the things we love to do on the show is address some of those misconceptions and biases that folks might have about the individuals that we supervise. I know there's no such thing as a typical inmate reentering society, but paint that picture, if you could, of someone being released from incarceration, reintegrating back into society. Maybe just give us a broad profile of what we're dealing with here.
He's male, he's poor, he has debt problems, he's drug addicted, And there's a lot of lack of non-criminal networking, loneliness, and also a lack of social competence. And there is a lack of work experience. It's a lack of education. They are without housing, and they also have not very experienced when it comes to host capacity. And they also are institutionalized because they have been in institution, in prison from they were kids. And they also have major issues when it comes to both mental and physical health. And they also have low social status, stigma. There's a lot of things when it comes to this group of people. So there is a lot of needs who has to be taken care of by different partners. And there's the problem when it comes to the release, because even if the Red Cross do everything perfect without tasks who we have taken care of, it's a lot of other problems who has to be solved by others. Because it's so important that the Red Cross shall not take over responsibility away from the public sector, such as education, social security benefits, punishment, etc. So that's why this is so difficult. So even if we and others service providers do a good job, we will not succeed if important needs are not taken care of by others, and especially from the public sectors. And that's why this is so complicated, because this is complex and the responsibility is so spread. And everybody, especially in the public sector, was working in silos.
Whenever somebody mentions the fact that our various stakeholders work in silos, I could not agree more with that sentiment. I think that's something we really need to address. Getting all those various service providers on the same page, both from a philosophical standpoint, but even in real practical terms, from that individual's perspective of having to race around town to attain these various resources. I love the solution to this challenge that you came up with. Talk about that for a little bit, if you would, please.
So my goal when I was actually the project was increasing, and I was actually you have to have a new locations. I think now we have to do something new. We have to have one place where we could collect all the most important services inside one building. So that's when I think it was in 2013, I started thinking about this, because you have to do something different. So my goal was actually to find a more holistic and effective way to return people back to society.
A noble goal, Stian, which I believe resulted in your first official reentry center, I believe, G26.
Actually, the result was the establishment of Nettverk after the first reentry center in Oslo, G26 we call it. Mm-hmm. And this center have actually to solve 5 main tasks. Make the re-entry more easy for the people we are trying to help, save time and money, together develop the best practice, how to cooperate, and also meet as many needs as possible inside this building. And also, of course, to reduce recidivism and crime, of course.
Stian, we know when implementing any major projects like this, there's always unanticipated things that pop up on the horizon. What was maybe one of the biggest surprises that you encountered as you were rolling out this major initiative?
That Red Cross dared to give me this opportunity. Everything could go wrong, of course. But the partners in this reentry center today is, of course, all the Red Cross own services in the network of imprisonment, but also the visitor service is established in this center. And also we have the correctional service also have offerings in this house. They have the Norwegian version of a drug court.
instead of putting those who have the biggest drug problems inside prison, we try to help them out on the outside. And if they do well, we don't put them back in prison. But if they don't do well, of course, they go back to prison. And we also have a prison coordinator when it comes, because there's a lot of different prisons who actually send people back to the bigger cities, especially Oslo. So it's the coordinator actually coordinates the re-entry back from the big prisons, so it may make it more official. And we also have our own social welfare office, the Norwegian Labour and Welfare Administration. I was working quite hard. I think I was working 5 years before I get them inside the building. I was actually making the office and also had the logo on the doors and make everything. So actually we tried, and after a while there was agreed to try a pilot, and now there is establishment for good, so that's good. And we also have the municipality school, the same school actually who have the education in the prison, have also the education inside the prison in the center. So if you are starting education during the sentence, you can continue after release outside the prison. And it's also important because in Norway now, I think we have about just 3,000 people sitting in Norwegian prison at this time. And we also have about 3,000 people having another kind of punishment outside prison, different, it could be electrical control, it could be probation and drug program and such on. So also if a youth person who actually we don't try to put in prison come in this center, we could put him in school at the same day. We don't follow the calendar. We don't have to wait for a new semester. We could put the student at the education at the same day. And the same student could actually also have work training in the same building the same day. So we can do a lot of things in the same building. So, and we also have the prison radio inside the center. They broadcast both prison program from the prison and outside. So that's also a nice offering. But I think now at this time we have about 2,000 square meter with different partners and offerings inside one building. And I'm sure if I have a building which is twice as big, it's no problem for me to fill up this building with offerings. Because now the Directorate of Correction in Norway actually have invited the Red Cross to start develop such center in all the big cities in Norway. So just for a month ago, they asked us if we want to start helping them to build a new, because we have to do something different. But because I know there is a lot of good things, of course, in Norway, but it's also, we are not good when it comes to re-entry. That was that was why I established this re-entry center, because we was so bad at it. So even today, it's not good enough. But I think this is a much more effective way to do it. And we see, I think my people working in the center increased the capacity with 30%. And we also do things much faster. And this is actually about saving time and saving money.
So many great themes coming out of your responses, Stian. It's no wonder that those of us around the world often look to Norway for those innovations. And you did point out that a lot of that attention is focusing on the prison system, and you're trying to bridge that gap to extend that theme, if you will, of progressiveness to the reintegration. I want to go back because you said at one point that you realized that real punishment starts after release from prison, which was something that I learned when I was watching that great documentary, The Road from Crime, produced by Fergus McNeil and Shad Maruna and Claire Lightower and Stephen Farrell. But that was expressed by some of those individuals. And to me, I think the public doesn't realize that as well, that the real struggle for many individuals leaving prison is that reintegration piece. And it sounds like you're trying to address that in the same spirit of how the prisons are viewed. Talk about, you mentioned it, the principle of normalcy. When I talk to individuals about the Norwegian prison philosophy, or we talk about dynamic security, A lot of times when I explain the principle of normalcy to folks, particularly those who work in a correctional center or a prison, rather, a jail, corrections officers, they tend to push back and almost bristle at that concept of normalcy, which I'll let you explain what it is, but define it and then give some examples and then maybe even talk about some of the initial struggles getting your staff to adopt that lens.
I think there was a big change in Norway because I think back in the 80s and 90s, thing was quite bad in the Norwegian Correctional Service. There was a lot of violence and people go back. I think the re-entry back to prison was maybe, I think, the numbers was quite bad when it comes to the results of what happened to people after release. And there was a lot of violence and everything was going the wrong direction. So I think Norway started looking at other countries to learn and do things differently because it's all about what we're doing with these people when they are in prison. And there is all about what we're doing with them when they're going back to society. Because in Norway, the punishment is actually the loss of the freedom. And except that, we shall try to help them to be better persons, good neighbors when they come back to society. And that's the most important thing. But even in Norway, things are not perfect when it comes to too much isolations, a lack of resources, of course. I think it's all over, and not just in Norway. But then I think, okay, we have to do things differently because there is a lot of opportunities still to do things differently. And especially when I talk about this re-entry program, this is a much more effective way to work and do things when it comes to get good result faster. And actually, I think do things more simple for the people we try to help. I think much of the helping, the system is doing things easy for themselves. We try to do things as easy as possible for the prisoners and the people we are releasing with this program. But I think when it comes to normality, in Norway there is, when you are in prison, actually you have the same rights as people outside the prisons when it comes to what the society has responsibility for. But that's not quite correct because, of course, a small female prison actually don't have the same offering as the big prisons for males, for example. So there's a big differences in Norway also when it comes to the sizes of prison, how good offerings we have, and also when it comes to diversity to male and females. So there's always things we are struggling with. But I think I think the normalcy, I think it's important. And also when it comes to dynamic security, because it's all about how we treat people when they're in prison. Because actually I was heard some Norwegian prison officer was actually have some visiting prisons in California. And they was told that there was, for example, not allowed for the prison officer in California to shake hands with a prisoner. And I think what kind of distance are they? What are they afraid of? I think it's so important that you have tried to understand, try to build good relations between the prison officers and the prisoner, and try to actually do something with them when they are in prison. And if you try to change somebody's attitude, and actually you have to start talking with them and treating them like humans, because I think if you treat people like shit or like animals or worse, I think the result on the other end is actually that. So what kind of people do we want back to the society? What kind of neighbors do we want to have back? I think people who have been treated fair, having opportunities, but this is not about being nice, because we could be strict, of course, and there is also when it comes to things happening, we try to do. But I think a lot of things, my own experience as prison officers, when you have a situation, people are frustrated, and you see, okay, this situation can develop to be something quite serious and quite bad. I think it's a lot of responsibility to the officers how to deal with the situation and talk things down and start. So there's a lot of things I think you have to learn in the education of prison officers. So I think it's so important that the prison officers treat people in a decent and good way, because this is actually how would you want to raise your kids?
Mm-hmm. It has been said many times, view these individuals as your future neighbors. How would you all want your future neighbors treated during their term of incarceration?
It's actually about raising, try to treat them as human beings. This is not rocket scientist. This is quite easy. So it's so hard for me to see. I think the tough on crime politics. I'm sure that tough on crime, if you by that means treat them hard and treat them bad, the result is more criminals and a more violent society, and the people coming back to society is even more dangerous than they have been before. And the situation I think every nation need people to be taxpayers and don't produce crimes. That's why it's so hard for me to understand, because these people cost society a lot of money. So why don't we want to invest more in these people? Because this is a great opportunity. So it's so hard for me to understand why we don't invest in these people, because crime costs a lot of money. So this is actually about an investment, I will tell.
Exactly. And I know the devil's in the details when it comes to implementing these new changes, these new philosophies. But I also know communication is at the key of that. Just talking to other jurisdictions, talking to other administrators and thought leaders around the world, sharing those ideas, sharing those successes. What inspired you to create your annual reintegration conference to share some of those key topics and ideas, and maybe talk a little bit about those conferences?
Yeah, I think it's so important, because if you want different fields in Norway to actually concern and take care of these people when they are released from prison, we have to actually, everybody tries to influence the politicians, and I think it's so important for us that people understand why this is so important, why this is so hard. So when the people understand, I think it's more easy for the politicians also to be soft on crime and do things in the right way. And I think this is actually about to develop and also to rise problems when it comes on the field. There's a lot of problems, both when they are in prison and especially when they are released from prison. And if we are going to do something about those problems, it's so important that we have this kind of conference, because we can raise issues related to the reentry process and contribute to ensuring that all the actors on the field get more knowledge and better cooperation routines. And actually, the first year we was having this conference, I think it was just some few people from the Red Cross and the correction. Today, it's participants from all the public sector and from the media, and this is being a big conference now. And I think it's so important to get attention and focus, both from those who are working in the field, but also from the society, from the media, from politicians, and also to raise problems. So I can take some examples. The first year, I think we have focused on the debt problems when it comes to the reentry, and then it was youth crime and gang crime, and then it was the mental health and isolation problems. And then last year, I think it was sex offenders. What do you do with them when they return to society? And also, how do we treat them in prison? And also, we have a lot of attention when it comes to networking. How do we build a new and healthy social network around those people? So actually, this is to make people more concerned about the re-entry and also raise problems when it comes to re-entry, both for the public and also for everybody working in this field. So I think this is so important that we start making people listen and also start being more concerned about, because there is a lot of things which we can change in a very easy way. So this is actually some of my projects, which because everything is about changing things.
We know, again, from the implementation science literature that most projects fail due to lack of communication. So I love what you just said about, at its basic level, these conferences are about sharing information, sharing successes, sharing what works, sharing what doesn't work. Could you maybe highlight even one or two illustrations of some successes that you've had, but also maybe some failures that you've learned from and modified practices along the way?
I think the most important thing is to dare to have big goals, big ambitions, because I have a lot of projects. Of course, not everybody of the projects are a succeed, but I think it's so important that we try and are curious. And if it doesn't work, stop doing it. Do something else. You always learn something. You have to develop. Start reaching out to do something better. So, of course, there was a lot of challenges. So maybe the most hard thing is actually to anchor this program and these ambitions in my own organization. It has been quite hard. And also when it comes to expanding and repeating a success is always difficult. So there is no easy way and no easy tasks. So there's always new challenges as far when you actually are developing, growing and expanding, of course. And also when you start on new places, actually because they have to be loyal to this model you have created, because it is so hard to build something, and if everybody do things on their own way and after their own head, so it's so important that you also start building up manuals for how this is being done and such on. So that's also important, of course. So also to change the way public sector works and cooperate is always hard, and it's always a strange struggle. So it's a lot of different things who is very, but I think everybody actually want to do things better. So I think it's so important to start. I think the success is, I think the success with this program and the way of doing things is actually because we want others to be good. I think there is a lot of competition when it comes to re-entry. And I think my goal is actually to make them being better, because they have to be better if they're going to get a better common result, of course. Finding the right people and getting rid of the bad people, of course, when you have employed the wrong people, is also important. And also to give people opportunities and trust, and because I want everybody to have ownership to this. This is not my project. I'm just a guy, and to try to find people better than yourself. I think that's maybe the most important thing, because there's a lot of good people which is very good in different things. So I think so. This is a lot about strategic and targeted work. So you have to be quite strategic. I think it's important. And also, I think it's important to get attention from the media, from the public, and the politicians. And also to find financing or create income is always hard, because it's not easy to when things start growing. It costs money to employ people, to run activities, to rent houses, and but I think if you're succeeding and you're doing the right things, it's more easy also to find financial resources, of course. But that's also very important. So there's a lot of things you have to be doing at the same time. I think the most important thing, if thing goes bad, stop doing this thing and do something new. I think the most important thing is to try.
Yeah, fail forward, as we like to say. You mentioned your goal of building internal capacity by, for example, the creation of training manuals and that type of thing. But you also mentioned your goal of spreading this. And I know you've had a little bit of influence on other jurisdictions with your network after imprisonment model or approach, if you will. Maybe talk about some of those areas such as Denmark and Iceland where they've tried to replicate this model.
Yeah, the Denmark, I think they have 5 different units now, close to Aarhus and Copenhagen. I think, but we used to have gatherings where we was sharing and learning from each other, but that was before COVID, and after that it was we haven't. So it's quite a while since I was visiting Denmark, but when I was visiting them in 2009, there was growing fast. We also started in Iceland. I'm not sure at this point how things are going on Iceland. Of course, Iceland is a small country. It's quite different from both Denmark and Norway. But the last project now, we are actually having a cooperation with the Norwegian Directorate and also Latvian Ministry of Justice and also the Latvian Red Cross. We are actually these days established in Latvia, and maybe we are going to establish in Lithuania and Croatia as well, because this is a close relation with the Norwegian Correctional Service. So we try to also help others who want to make similar things. I think this is important, but also I think it's important for us, because I'm not doing this just for helping others. It's so important for me as well to see what others are doing, and because you always learn something. So this is all about sharing and learning, of course, because there is always something to learn about others. And the same with the Norwegian Correctional Service. Actually, the Pathfinder unit in Oslo prison, which is quite an important model in Norway, is actually stolen from New York in the US. So, and also when it comes to the contact officers, I think it was something we stole from Sweden. And we also have a lot of programs from Canada. And the dynamic security model is actually stolen from England. So I think we have to learn and share. I think this is that's why I think in the future maybe I want to travel more and learn more and share more with other countries. I think I hope I get this opportunity because things are quite similar. Last week I have a big group from Saudi Arabia.
Oh wow.
So that was strange because I think it's quite a distance when it comes to correction in Saudi Arabia and Norway, of course. But they was quite interested. And okay, if I could do something small steps together with them, it's so important. And from a month ago, I was in Brazil and Colombia visiting prison there, and also see something in Brazil was actually quite progressive. So there's always something to learn. There's always something to share. And if other countries who have struggles with things, we could share with them. So it's, of course, it's important, I think.
I love that approach about sharing and getting an international perspective. I couldn't agree more. And of course, regular listeners of the podcast know that I've been blessed to have been able to do a lot of travel and training around the world. And to your point, when you think that another jurisdiction may not have much in common with what we're doing in our little corner of the world, you hear those bright spots and those commonalities. And for me, at least, it just warms my heart. For example, when I'm in another corner of the world and I hear them throw out that term criminogenic or dynamic security, and I think, okay, that's just not me here in my little corner of the world. I'm talking to somebody in Europe or in Kenya, and they're saying criminogenic. That tells me we're onto something here. We're on the right pathway here. Stian, look into your crystal ball. Look into the future. When I have you back on the podcast in, say, a year or 5 years, what are some of your future plans and aspirations? What do you think we might be talking about in the future when I have you back on the show?
I still see a lot of opportunities in Norway to do a lot of changing, especially when it comes to how we work digital, because there are quite big distances between the big prisons and the cities where people are going to be released, and there is a lot of municipality different offerings and others who actually the prisoners need help from. So we have to do things in another way in the future. And I think the reentry center is very good, but there is still a lot of opportunities. And I want always to, I think I will continue working for developing and inflating and changing the way we are carry out the punishment and how we return people to society. And I hope in the future that there's so much visits to the Norwegian Correctional Service, and there's so much people having the same experience and having the same the wrangling in the. So I think there is a lot of willingness and opportunities all over the world to change things to the better. So that's, I think there is a lot of opportunities. And I hope when maybe next time we are meeting some of the biggest countries in the world who have most people in prison actually could do some major steps. Because when I was in Colombia especially, I was so shocked what I was seeing and how they treat people. I saw some guys, they were in custody in a small police station. I think there was 6 square meters. It was actually a cage. And there was 9 persons inside this cage. And I was asking one of the prisoners, how long have you been sitting here? 41 months. And he has not been out of this cage for 41 months. And he was not been judged yet. So there's a lot of bad things happening all over the world. I actually hope I have the opportunity to see some changing in those countries who has the most inhumane prisons and systems. So I hope I have the opportunity to share and learn and see things going the right way. And I hope we see some steps in those countries, of course.
Yes, let's hope we both get to see those changes, Stian. Let's hope we both get to see those changes. Stian Estenstad joining us all the way from Norway today. Thank you so much for joining us on the Criminologist podcast. And until we meet again, my friend, keep doing the great work you're doing.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you, Stian Estenstad, for sharing your invaluable insights and experiences with us today. Norway continues to inspire as a beacon for progressive prison reform and innovative prisoner reintegration efforts. Stian's dedication and leadership exemplify the transformative impact individuals can have within the criminal justice system. As we move forward this season, we are excited to announce our new format. The Criminologist podcast will now be dropping bi-weekly, bringing you fresh episodes every 2 weeks. In this season, we are introducing a new style by pairing returning guests for enriching conversations and diverse perspectives. Join us in our next episode as we welcome back Jackie Dunn and Jonathan Fisher. I encourage our listeners to revisit their previous appearances on the Criminologist podcast to dive deeper into their insights and experiences. Until then, you may contact the show or reach out to us through our website, the Paragon Group, LLC.com, for training or presentations as to core correctional skills, the topic of desistance from crime, or, of course, our innovative TIDES program model. If you have questions or comments as to this podcast, feel free to contact the show via our email at thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. That's thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to follow us through our Facebook and Instagram pages at The Criminologist Podcast. New fun images are being added all the time to those feeds. You don't want to miss out. We are also on Twitter, now known as X. Give us a follow at Crim Media Group. That's CRIM Media Group. And you may also connect with me, Joseph Arvidsson, on LinkedIn, and follow both the Criminologist Podcast and the Paragon Group on our LinkedIn pages. Hey, lastly, if you've not already done so, check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Criminologist, for additional content as to the themes of this program. And if you believe in what we're doing on the show, if you're part of the movement, please spread the word, tell a friend or a coworker or a colleague about us. Ask them to subscribe to the podcast, and of course, do so yourself if you've not already done so. And always remember, folks, there's no them, there's only us.
Actually, my experience was that a new punishment starts the day they were released from prison. I said these people go from being locked in prison, being locked out of society when they were released from prison.
The Criminologist Podcast is a production of the Paragon Group, LLC. For speaking engagements, interviews, program design, or training opportunities, please visit us at theparagongroup.llc.com. If you enjoyed the show, you can find more content and videos on our YouTube channel, The Criminologist. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Both the Criminologist Podcast and the Criminologist channel are brought to you by the Criminologist Media Group. Be sure to give us a 5-star review, and thanks for listening.